I was standing in my kitchen phone, pressed against my ear, listening to a voice I had not heard in 19 years. My father. His words came out shaky, almost rehearsed. He told me my mother was dying. Cancer. Stage 4. She wanted to see me one last time before she passed. For a moment, the room spun around me and I was 17 again, packing a bag in the dead of night, ready to disappear from the house that never felt like home. Before we dive into this story, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. If you believe everyone deserves to protect their peace, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Now let me take you back to where it all began, back to the house I escaped from 19 years ago. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and secrets never stayed buried for long. My parents divorced when I was 8 years old. I remember sitting on the stairs, listening to them argue in the kitchen below. My mother got custody, and for 2 years, it was just the two of us. Those were simple times. We did not have much money, but we had each other, and that felt like enough. Everything changed when I was 10. My mother met Gerald at her workplace. He was a sales manager, confident, loud, always ready with a joke that made everyone laugh except me. Gerald had 2 children from his previous marriage. Dustin was 3 years older than me, and Brenda was 1 year older. When my mother announced they were getting married, she sat me down and promised that our lives would only get better. She said I would have a bigger family, now siblings to play with, a father figure to look up to. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. The first few months were tolerable. Gerald made an effort to include me in family activities, and Dustin and Brenda mostly ignored me, which I considered a win. But slowly, the cracks began to show. Gerald started making comments about how I was too quiet, too sensitive, not like his kids. Dustin and Brenda got the 2 large bedrooms upstairs while I was moved to the basement. My mother explained that it made sense because I was the youngest and did not need as much space. The basement was cold in winter and damp in summer. I could hear the pipes groaning at night, like the house itself was complaining. The favoritism became impossible to ignore. When Dustin wanted new football gear, Gerald bought it without hesitation. When Brenda needed a laptop for school, it appeared within days. But when I needed new shoes, because mine had holes in them, my mother told me we had to wait until next month. I learned to stop asking. On my 12th birthday, my mother forgot. She had been so busy planning Brenda's 16th birthday party, which was 2 weeks away, that mine slipped her mind entirely. When I reminded her at dinner, she apologized and said we would celebrate over the weekend. We never did. The household chores fell disproportionately on my shoulders. Dustin and Brenda were always too busy with extracurriculars, according to Gerald. So I washed dishes, vacuumed floors, mowed the lawn, and cleaned bathrooms while they played video games or went out with friends. When something broke in the house, I was automatically blamed. A cracked window became my fault even though I was at school when it happened. A stained carpet meant I was careless even though Brenda was the one who spilled grape juice on it. I learned to keep my head down and my mouth shut. Dustin figured out quickly that he could do whatever he wanted to me without consequences. The first time he punched me in the stomach, I was 11. He cornered me in the basement and told me that if I ever told anyone, he would make my life a living nightmare. I believed him because his eyes held a coldness I had never seen in another child. The hits became regular occurrences. He would shove me into walls, trip me on the stairs, and once he held my head underwater in the bathtub until I thought my lungs would burst. He always made sure there were no visible bruises. Brenda's cruelty was different but equally devastating. She spread rumors about me at school, told other kids I wet the bed, that I was adopted, and unwanted, that my real father left because he was ashamed of me. By the time I reached middle school, I had no friends. I ate lunch alone in the library, pretending to read books while fighting back tears. When I came home and told my mother that kids were bullying me, she sighed and said I needed to toughen up. She never asked what they were saying or who was behind it. The incident that broke something inside me happened when I was 15. I had spent an entire month working on a science project, a model of the solar system, with a detailed report on planetary orbits. I was proud of it, genuinely excited to turn it in. The night before it was due, I came home to find Dustin had smashed it to pieces. He claimed he accidentally knocked it over while looking for something in my room. But the smile on his face told a different story. When I confronted him in front of Gerald, demanding to know why he was even in my room, Gerald told me to calm down. He said Dustin already apologized and that I needed to stop being dramatic. Then he made me apologize to Dustin for raising my voice. My mother stood in the doorway, watching everything. She said nothing. Later that night, she came to the basement and whispered that I should just keep the peace. She said it was not that bad that families have disagreements. After that, I stopped trying to connect with any of them. I went to school, came home, did my chores, and disappeared into the basement. I counted the days until I could leave. I got a part-time job at a grocery store, hiding my earnings in a shoebox under a loose floorboard. I told no one about it. I started researching how to get emancipated, what I would need to survive on my own, which cities had shelters for runaway teens. The night before my 17th birthday, I was lying in bed when I heard voices upstairs. Gerald and my mother were talking in the living room, unaware that sound traveled through the vents. Gerald said clearly that I was a burden and questioned why he should pay for my college when I was not even his kid. I waited for my mother to defend me. Instead, I heard her sigh and say she did not know what to do with me. She said maybe I would figure things out on my own after graduation. There was no argument, no pushback, just resignation. I was a problem they were waiting to be rid of. That night, I made my decision. I packed everything I could fit into a backpack. $312 from my shoebox, a few changes of clothes, a photograph of my mother from before Gerald, back when she still looked at me like I mattered. At 2 a.m, I walked out the front door without looking back. I took a Greyhound bus to Columbus with no real plan beyond getting away. Those first weeks were terrifying. I slept at the bus station on park benches, wherever I could find a spot that felt marginally safe. I rationed my money carefully, eating from dollar menus and filling my water bottle at public fountains. I learned quickly that the world did not care about a 17-year-old runaway. Most people looked right through me. My luck changed when I wandered into a small Puerto Rican restaurant looking for a job. The owner was a man named Antonio Martinez, a heavyset guy in his 60s, with kind eyes and flour permanently dusted on his apron. He asked why a kid my age was looking for work in the middle of a school day. I told him the truth, or at least most of it. I said I had left home and needed to support myself. He studied me for a long moment, then handed me an apron and told me to start washing dishes. That was the beginning of my real life. Antonio let me sleep in the storage room behind the kitchen. It was cramped and smelled like onions, but it was warm and dry and mine. He never asked too many questions, but he made sure I ate 3 meals a day and took breaks when I needed them. After a few weeks, he sat me down and told me that working in his kitchen was fine for now, but I needed to think about my future. He pushed me to study for my GED, even bought me the prep books himself. At night, after the restaurant closed, I would sit at a corner table and work through practice tests while Antonio cleaned the grill and told me stories about his own youth in San Juan. I passed my GED 6 months later. Antonio threw a small celebration, just him and his wife Rosa, and a few of the regular customers. Rosa made a cake with my name on it, the first birthday cake I had received in years. I cried in the bathroom afterwards, overwhelmed by the kindness of strangers who had become more family to me than my blood relatives ever were. With my GED in hand, I applied to community colleges and was accepted with a partial scholarship to study electrical engineering. I worked full-time at the restaurant and took classes in the mornings and evenings. The schedule was brutal, but I was driven by something more powerful than exhaustion. I refused to fail. I refused to prove Gerald right about me being a burden destined to amount to nothing. After completing my associate degree, I transferred to a state university in Colorado. I chose Denver because it was far from Ohio, because the mountains felt like a fresh start, because nobody there knew my name or my history. I worked internships during summers, saved every penny, and graduated with a degree in electrical engineering at 24 years old. I still remember walking across that stage, looking out at the crowd of families, cheering for their graduates, and feeling both proud and empty at the same time. My career progressed faster than I expected. I started as a junior technician at an industrial electrical company and worked my way up through determination and long hours. By 28, I had saved enough to start my own business, a small firm specializing in electrical systems for commercial buildings. I named it Summit Electrical Solutions. The name reminded me of the mountains that had become my home and the climb it took to get there. I never contacted my family. I changed my phone number multiple times over the years and stayed off social media entirely. In my mind, they had made their choice about me long before I made mine about them. I built a life from nothing, and I was not about to let them anywhere near it. Then I met Maya. She walked into my life at an industry conference in Denver when I was 30 years old. She was an architect working for a firm that had contracted with my company on a hospital project. I noticed her across the room, tall with curly brown hair and a smile that seemed to light up whatever space she occupied. We started talking about the project, then about architecture and design, then about everything and nothing at all. By the end of the night, I had her phone number and a feeling I had not experienced before. Our courtship was slow and careful. I was not used to letting people in, and Maya sensed that without needing explanation. She was patient, never pushing me to share more than I was ready to reveal. When I finally told her about my childhood, about the basement, and the bullying and the night I ran away, she listened without interruption. When I finished, she took my hand and told me that my past did not define me, that my choices did. In that moment, I knew I loved her. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. Our wedding was small, just a few close friends and Antonio and Rosa, who flew out from Columbus and cried the entire ceremony. Maya and I bought a house in the suburbs of Denver, a beautiful craftsman-style home with a big backyard and a porch where we would drink coffee on weekend mornings. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I had a wife who loved me, a business that was thriving, and a future that looked bright. I told myself the past was finally behind me. I should have known better than to believe that. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening, 4 years into our marriage. I was sitting on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains pink and orange when an unknown number appeared on my screen. Something made me answer it. The voice on the other end was hesitant, older than I remembered, but unmistakably my father. He explained that he had spent months tracking me down through old friends and public business records. His voice cracked when he told me about my mother. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed 3 months ago, already stage 4. The doctors said she had weeks, maybe a month at best. She was asking for me. She wanted to see her son one last time before she died. I hung up without saying goodbye and sat in silence as the sky darkened around me. When Maya came outside to check on me, she found me still staring at the mountains, the phone clutched in my hand. I told her everything. She held me while I processed the news, rubbing circles on my back and murmuring words I cannot remember now. In the days that followed, Maya began gently suggesting that I consider going back. She said that people change over time, that holding on to anger only hurts the person carrying it, that I might regret not seeing my mother before she passed. I explained why I could not do it, recounted specific incidents, reminded her of the damage they had caused. She listened and nodded, but I could tell she was not convinced. The suggestions became more frequent. Every dinner conversation seemed to circle back to the topic. Maya started reading articles about family reconciliation and forgiveness, leaving them open on her laptop where I would see them. She mentioned a coworker whose estranged father died before they could reconnect, and how that coworker still carried the guilt. Her intentions were good, I told myself. She just did not understand. One evening, I came home to find Maya typing quickly on her phone. When I walked into the room, she hastily put it away and changed the subject. I noticed she seemed nervous, distracted. When I asked if everything was okay, she said she was just stressed about a project at work. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. A week later, Maya sat me down with an announcement. She had booked flights to Ohio for both of us, departing in 3 days. She had arranged everything, found a hotel near my childhood town, even rented a car. She said she knew I was resistant, but sometimes people needed a push to do the right thing. She promised she would be by my side the entire time. All I had to do was show up. I was furious. I told her she had no right to make that decision for me, that this was my trauma and my choice. We argued for hours, voices rising and falling through the night. Maya cried and said she was only trying to help, that she could not stand watching me carry this weight, that I deserved closure even if I did not want it. Against my better judgment, I agreed to go. Maybe part of me did want to see my mother one last time. Maybe part of me hoped she would finally apologize. The flight to Ohio felt like traveling back in time. As the plane descended through gray clouds, I watched the flat farmland stretch out below and felt the old familiar knot forming in my stomach. Maya held my hand and told me I was doing the right thing. I wished I could share her certainty. We picked up the rental car and drove through towns I had tried to forget. Maya was navigating on her phone, directing me to turn left, then right, then onto a main street I did not recognize. When she told me to pull into the parking lot of a large Italian restaurant, I assumed this was where we would meet my parents. I steeled myself for the confrontation ahead. Walking through the front door, I immediately knew something was wrong. The restaurant was full of people, but they were not strangers eating dinner. They were faces from my past. Aunts and uncles I had not seen in 2 decades. Old neighbors from my childhood street. And there, standing near a table decorated with balloons and streamers, was my mother, healthy, smiling, very much alive. A banner hung across the back wall, reading, "Welcome home." Gerald stood beside my mother, grinning, like this was the funniest thing he had ever witnessed. Dustin raised a glass of beer in mock salute. Brenda giggled and whispered something to the cousin standing next to her. I stood frozen as my brain struggled to process what I was seeing. My mother walked toward me with outstretched arms. She said she was sorry for the deception, but they knew I would never come back willingly. She said they missed me, that the family wanted to reunite, that it was time to let go of the past. Dustin appeared at my shoulder and clapped me on the back. He laughed and asked if they got me good. He said the dying mother's story was Maya's idea, that she was the one who figured out how to track me down, that she had been in contact with them for months, planning this whole thing. I turned to look at Maya. She would not meet my eyes. Her face was flushed, her hands trembling at her sides. That was when I understood the full scope of what had happened. My wife, the person I trusted more than anyone in the world, had conspired with the people who broke me to manipulate me into this moment. Brenda stepped forward and said they should all take a family photo now that everyone was together again. Gerald suggested I should give a speech thanking them for never giving up on me. My mother kept talking about fresh starts and forgiveness, as if the past 19 years were just a minor misunderstanding. Something inside me finally cracked. I raised my hand, and the room fell silent. Every eye turned toward me, waiting for the grateful response they expected. Instead, I spoke slowly and clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. I told them to listen carefully, because I would only say this once. I told them that they lied about my mother dying to trick me into coming back. I asked them if they thought that was love, if they thought that was family. I looked around the room at all those familiar faces and explained what happened in that house when no one was watching. I told them about the basement, about the beatings from Dustin, about the lies Brenda spread at school, about Gerald treating me like an unwanted guest in my own home. I told them about my mother standing by and doing nothing about her telling me to keep the peace, while her husband and stepchildren destroyed me piece by piece. The smiles faded. Relatives shifted uncomfortably. Someone near the back quietly put down their drink. Gerald started to interrupt, to say I was exaggerating, but I kept talking. I said that I left that house at 17 with $300 and the clothes on my back, that I slept in bus stations and worked myself to exhaustion, that I built a life and a business from nothing while they forgot I existed. And now they expected me to be grateful for this, for being lied to and manipulated one more time. I turned to Maya. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I asked her how she could do this. I reminded her that I told her everything, that I trusted her with the worst parts of my life. I asked if she understood that she used my pain to help them hurt me again. She tried to speak, to explain that she thought it would help, that she believed families should be together. I told her that I had a family and that I built one and that she just destroyed it. I walked out of that restaurant without looking back. I heard my mother calling after me, heard Maya sobbing my name, but I kept walking until I reached the sidewalk. I called a taxi on my phone and waited in the cold night air until it arrived. At the airport, I managed to change my flight to a red-eye back to Denver. I sat in the terminal for hours staring at nothing, feeling the full weight of the betrayal settle into my bones. On the plane, somewhere over the dark expanse of the Midwest, I cried for the first time in 19 years. I did not cry for my mother or for the family I never had. I cried for the trust I had given to Maya and the brutal way she had broken it. Maya returned home 2 days later. I was sitting in the living room when she walked through the door, her face swollen from crying, her suitcase dragging behind her. She dropped to her knees in front of me and begged for forgiveness. She said she was wrong, that she did not fully understand the depth of what they had done to me, that she genuinely believed reconciliation would heal me. She promised to spend the rest of her life making it up to me. I listened without interrupting. When she finished, I told her that I believed she did not act out of malice. I believed she truly thought she was helping. But I also told her that she crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. She knew my boundaries. She knew my trauma. And instead of respecting them, she decided she knew better. I told her I needed time to figure out if I could ever trust her again, the way I once did. We separated 3 months later and divorced within the year. It was amicable in the legal sense. We divided our assets, fairly sold the house, and went our separate ways. Maya sent me a long letter after the divorce was finalized, apologizing again and wishing me well. I read it once and then put it away. I did not hate her. I just could not love someone who had shown me that my pain was something to be managed rather than respected. In the aftermath, I started seeing a therapist for the first time in my life. Working through the layers of trauma was like excavating an archaeological site, each session revealing something new buried beneath the surface. I learned to name what had happened to me: neglect, emotional abuse, parentification. I learned that my instinct to run was actually a survival mechanism that saved my life. And I learned that forgiveness does not require reconciliation, that you can release your anger without inviting the people who hurt you back into your life. I never contacted my family again. Occasionally, I wonder if my mother is actually sick now, if one day I will receive a real call about her death. I have made peace with the fact that I will not be there when it happens. The woman who raised me stopped being my mother long before I left that house. I mourned her years ago. Today at 36, I have rebuilt my life once more. My business continues to grow. I have friends who have become my chosen family. I adopted a rescue dog named Charlie, who greets me at the door every evening with unbridled joy. I am learning to trust again slowly and carefully with people who have earned that trust through actions rather than words. If you are watching this and carrying wounds from people who were supposed to protect you, I want you to know something important. You have the right to walk away. You have the right to choose peace over obligation. And you have the right to build a family of your own, one that loves you the way you deserve to be loved. Blood does not make someone family. Loyalty does. Respect does. Being there when it matters does. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, not a debt you owe to those who hurt you. And reconciliation requires trust. Trust must be earned, never demanded, never manipulated, never forced. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from people who hurt you, even when everyone else told you to forgive them? Share your story in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss future stories. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, share this video with them. Thank you for watching and for being part of this community. I hope you find the peace you are searching for, whatever that looks like for you.